No, it's not. It's a public relations job, so. Yeah, and so if you can take your case, you just going to do that as a secret. I didn't know something. Sorry, I didn't know. Some of these agents.
Okay, gentlemen. So we're on Daf Ayin Beis, and we're up to Amar Rav. Above Machteres. You have it? It's right there at the beginning of the Gemara. I would say 1, 2, 3, 4 lines down when the Gemara starts. It should be the 5th wide line down. Above Machteres, with Natal Kalim V'yatza Potter. So the emphasis here in Rav is on the word V'natal as opposed to V'shiber. Omar Rova Mistabra Milsa Derab V'shiber the Lesnahu Avol Natal Lo. So Rav's Chiddush is that even if the Bava Machteres leaves the Machteres and he's actually holding on to the hefza that he stole, he doesn't have to return it. And what's the reasoning of Rav? Because my time of bidomim kaninu. So we're talking about a kinyan here. In this case, the kinyan of a ganav. Oh, thank you so much. And the Gemara says, Velokim, Veloshin Shvuot, Omar Rav, Afilu Natal. So for those who just came in, we're on Daf Ayin Beis, and we're at the beginning of the Gemara. And Rav's Shita was that Bab Machteres is Potur. He doesn't have to give back the object, even if he's holding on to the object. And why is that? Because Bidomim Koninu. And this was the sugya that we started last week. Now we want to get into it. The Hayeshlo Domim, right? In a classic case of a Ganav, not a Baba Machteres, where it's Yeshlo Domim, in other words, there's no Iyuv Miskay Benafsho, Venensu. So let's say he stole Kalim and they broke Biones through no Pshia of his own, Chayev. Alma, says Rav, what do we see? What conclusion do we derive from the fact that a Ganav is Chayev Anonsim? Birshuse Kaime. It's his, he owns it. Hachinami, and here too, in the case of a Ganav who's Ein Lo Domim, meaning he's above a Machteres, Birshuse Kaime. It belongs to him, and therefore he has no Chiyuv Hashavah. So that Rav is of the opinion that a Ganav, even a regular Ganav of Yeshlo Domim, classic Ganav, is Kona his Gneva. He actually acquires ownership on his Gneva. And there are at least 2 sugyas that seem to support Rav, maybe even a third sugya, but we'll mention 2 of them. One of them is in Baba Kama Daf Tzadi Zayin, and there the Gemara establishes that when you have something called tashmishim, that means if, let's say, I use your object, I have to pay for those tashmishim, like a rental kind of fee. But in the case of a Ganav, the Gemara establishes in Bava Kama Tzadi Zayin that he doesn't pay rental fees. Why not? Why is he different than anyone else? So that's one raya that a Ganav has a kinyan on the Gneva. And again, we're talking about a Ganav di Alma, meaning not a Bava Machteres. He doesn't pay for tashmishim. A second sugya is in Bava Kama Daf Yud Aleph. And please remind me, gentlemen, I want to tell you about Lag BaOmer. I don't know if you saw, you didn't see. So the Gemara in Bava Kama Daf Yud Aleph has a discussion about shaman, which means the following, that if the animal was taken, let's say by a shomer, and then the animal died, and the shomer has to pay for the animal, let's say he was posher, whatever the case may be, then shaman means we evaluate the carcass, how much does a dead animal sell for on the market? We subtract that from the live animal. So it was worth 5. Now it's only worth 1 as a piece of meat. And you can only sell it to a guy, obviously. And he pays the differential. He'll pay 4. That's called shamin. The Gemara has machlokes whether or not shamin l'shoel. A shoel is chayfa onsim, and now the onus happened. The animal, let's say, got struck by lightning and it died. And now it's worth, as a carcass, it's worth 1. It was worth alive. How much was worth alive? 5. And the Gemara has 2 opinions amongst the Amoraim as to how much the shoel will pay. According to one opinion, shamin l'shoel, shoel is like any other shomer. And therefore he pays the differential, which would be in this case, how much? 4. Or do we say ein shamin l'shoel? That means that the shoel has to pay the full value of the animal, 5, and it's his headache to make up the differential by selling the carcass. And we're trying to understand what the machlokas is all about with regard to shoel. But before we get to that, let's point out that the sugya comes to the conclusion that with regard to a ganav, ein shamin l'ganav. That means if a person steals an object, let's say an animal, the animal dies, and a ganav is chayfa owns him like a shoel. But in this case, kuliyamalo pligi, it's obvious that ein shamin, meaning the ganav is going to have to pay the full 5. And it's his headache to deal with the carcass. So we're trying to understand the difference between a ganav and a shoel. In a shoel, we have an issue whether or not a shoel, when he's chayv for onsim, he's going to pay the full price as the animal was worth alive, and that's called ein shamin l'shoel. Or do we say shamin l'shoel, and he only pays the differential between the live and the dead animal, which is only 4. Now, if there's a machlokus with regard to shoel who's chayv ba'onsim, we would have anticipated that the same identical machlokus should apply to what? Who else is chayv ba'onsim? A ganav. But yet, with regard to ganav, it seems like it's a davar pashut, milsa de pshita, that ein shamin l'ganav. He has to pay the full 5. And the answer to that riddle seems to be written right here in Rav. What does Rav say here in Sanhedrin on Daf Ayin Beis? He says that I'm going to prove to you that a ganav has a kinyan on the object that he stole, because the nensu, in a case where there was an ones that happened, chayav, he has to pay for onsim. What logical conclusion does Rav derive from the fact that a ganav has to pay for onsim? Kinyan, that he has a kinyan, it's bershusei kaimei. And based on this concept of bershusei kaimei, Rav is going to go a step further and say that afilu notal, in the case of Bab Machteres, he doesn't have to return the object because b'damim koninu. Again, whatever b'damim koninu means, and we'll have to introduce Kimlev the Rabbi now, obviously, but one thing is clear, that Rav is telling us that from the chiyuv onsim, in the case of a ganav, I can derive the conclusion that a ganav has what? Has kinyanim. Hence, if the ganav has kinyanim, he's got to pay the full 5 in the case of onsim, and we're not going to do a shuma and subtract the value of the carcass. In the case of shoel, he's also chayiv ba'onsim. But there are 2 possible ways of defining the chiv onsim in the case of a shoel. One of them is to say that he's a bailim, and since he's a bailim, he pays for onsim. If I own a painting, and the painting, I don't know, there's a tornado and it gets destroyed, that's my loss because it's my painting. But there's another way of learning why a shoel is chayiv ba'onsim. What's that? Which is called what? Again, I need that one word that just kolea el matara. Achrayus, exactly. So there are 2 ways again. If you're going to say that a shoel is chayiv and achrayus, okay, he's chayiv and achrayus, but he's like any other shomer. Just that other shomer only chayiv for shia, he's chayiv even for onsim. So then we're going to say shomer l'shoel. He's not a bailu. He has to pay for the loss that he caused the balabayis, the owner of the animal. And he's chayav on onsim, but only b'toras achrayus. So he took achrayus for the animal. The animal is now worth 1, and it's yours. You're the balabayis. You take back your dead animal. I'll pay you the differential.
There's no Kenyan Bibles.
That's one way of understanding shoel. It's only a chiyuv achrayus. The chiyuv achrayus is the highest level of achrayus. The other man, the Omer, says no. How could you be chayiv achrayus at a level of onsim? Who could even imagine these two concepts of chiyuv onsim and achrayus are mutually exclusive? Because achrayus means that I'm responsible for the loss of the object. Onus means I'm not responsible for the loss of the object. And therefore, ein shomin l'shoel means that the shoel, by virtue of the fact that he's chayiv and onsim, is considered a bailim. So let's just summarize everything we've said, and that is that according to Rav, a ganav has kinyonim. And since a ganav has kinyonim, we can understand A, the sugya bava kama, that he doesn't pay for tashmishim, and B, the sugya at the beginning of bava kama, ein shomin l'ganav. It means that Rav understood from the chiyuv onsim of a ganav that the ganav acquires ownership over the object that he stole. But there's only one problem. What does the Torah tell the ganav? What does the Torah command the ganav? That's not ownership. You can't tell me that I own something and then tell me that I have to fork it over to somebody else, namely to give it back to the bailim. So therefore, it's obvious now that even if we would understand Rav as saying, which is almost explicit in the words of Rav, that a ganav has a kinyan on the object that he stole, I still don't understand how to reconcile that kinyan with the chiyuv hashava. So let's leave that on the side for just a moment, because what concept is the only possible way we could get out of this mess, this mavok? Well, we're before the Rashash. We're 1 second before the Rashash. Well, what concept do we have to invoke here? What does Rav mean when he says "B'damim koninu"? Kim lebi the Rabmina. You with me, Rabbi? Like Kim lebi the Rabmina. What we're going to say is that okay, you have a chiyuv hashava, but the halacha is that we can't impose chiyuvim to have a person pay if at the same time that he incurred the chiyuv, he also what? He was mischayev b'nafsho. That's called kim lebi the Rabmina. So Rav is going to put these two things together. He's going to say, wait a minute, the ganav made a kinyan. Now what are you telling me? Well, there's something that is a barrier. What's the barrier that prevents that kinyan from maturing, from becoming a full-fledged kinyan? It's the chiyuv hashava. Well, there is no chiyuv hashava, says Rav. Why not? Kim lebi the Rabmina. But here's where we get lost. And that's where David quotes the Rashash. The halach of kim lebi the Rabmina does not give a person kinyanim. If the Torah says that this vase that he stole has to be returned to its owner, and the owner comes knocking on the door of the ganav, and he says, I want my vase back, and the Torah commands the ganav to return it, you can't tell me that because he was mischayev b'nafsho at the time that he stole the vase, therefore he acquires a kinyan, which means that we remove that barrier that prevented the ganav's kinyan from maturing and becoming a full-fledged kinyan, namely the chiyuv hashava. Oh, very nice. We're going to undermine and neutralize the chiyuv hashava. You know why? Because he was mischayev b'nafsho. What kind of sense does that make? The Torah says that the bailim, the nigna, has a right to get back his object. Oh, he's chayav misa, so therefore he doesn't have a right to get back his object. That's my vase. And the Torah says you have to give it back to me. And that's what's preventing the kinyan of the ganav from maturing and becoming a full-fledged kinyan. And now you're going to tell me, well, he was mischayev b'nafsho. What sense does that make? And here's where we introduce the Rashash. The Rashash has a radical breakthrough. And according to the Rashash, the halacha of Veheshev Zagzela Shar Gazal is a chiyuv tashlumin. Rabbi said, do you hear this? If you would have woken me up in the middle of the night, sorry to be dramatic about it, and told me this Rashash, I would have told you you're crazy, you're nuts. What do you mean it's a chiyuv tashlumin? This is what you call mamoni gabach. What does mamoni gabach mean? It's my mammon. I don't have to ask you permission to take back my vase. It's my vase. And now you're telling me it's a chiyuv tashlum and he's paying up like damages in the zik. And I understand there's a chiyuv tashlum. So you say kim levi the Rabmine, and he doesn't have to incur any chiyuv tashlum. And he burnt down his friend's haystack on Shabbos, right? The Mishnah in Berek HaKones, and it was a violation of Shabbos. He doesn't have to pay damages. Why? That I could perhaps understand. Even that I have a problem with. But that's at least Tashlumin Nezikin. He has to compensate the Nizak for burning down his haystack. Okay, so I don't have to compensate you. Why? Because of the din of Kim Levi the Ramine. Kim Levi the Ramine could knock off a chiv Tashlumin. But if it's Mamoni Gabach, and this is exactly what the Meiri quotes, the famous Chachmei Tzarfatim in Bava Kama Daf Ayin, that if at the time that he was Mischayev Benafsho, he also incurred a chiv to return someone's mammon. Let's say, for example, he would borrow something while he is violating the Shabbos. Says the Chachmei Tzarfatim, you would certainly have to return that which is rightfully belongs to someone else. And now we have a case in which a Ganav steals something, in this case above Machteres, and now you're telling me, you know what? He doesn't have to return the object. Because returning the object, says the Rashash, is what? Is Tashlumin. Similar to the Zikin. In Yiddish, we say Vikan design. It's crazy to say such a thing. And the Rashash invokes the halacha of Idis. What is Idis? If, let's say, a person has to pay money for whatever, compensation and so for the chiyuv, and he doesn't have money in his bank account, you could talk about a baal with regard to ksuba, you could talk about a mazik with regard to chiyuv in the zikin, and we could talk about a ganav, and in all these cases, the halacha of karka. What kind of karka? How many levels of or gradations of karka do we know of? 3. And sometimes a person is chayav to pay idus. He's got to pay back in the highest quality. Well, we're talking about metaltalin here. The man stole a vase. What would be the best payment that you can imagine of the vase? The vase itself. And that's the Rashash's chiddush, that when the Ganav has to return the object that he stole, he is paying for the object in a very strange way. He's paying for the object by returning the object itself. The Heres Tavaisa, this becomes Idis. This is a Tashlumi Idis. Memela, if we accept this breakthrough of the Rashash, Rav begins to make a little sense. Rav is now saying, well, if you're defining Veishiv Zakzela as a Chiv Tashlumin, we have halacha of Kim Levi the Ramine. And Kim Levi the Ramine means he doesn't have to pay Tashlumin because he was Miskayim Benafsho. Well, guess what, says Rav? As soon as you remove, as soon as you neutralize the Chiv Hashava, because that's a Chiv Tashlumin, it's knocked off by Kim Levi the Ramine, Memela, the Kinyan, the Ganav, becomes a full-fledged Kinyan. Because what prevented the Kinyan of the Ganav from becoming a full-fledged Kinyan? It was the Chiv Hashava. If we knock off the Chiv Hashava, Memela, he has a full-fledged Kinyan, and Shalom Al Yisrael, he doesn't have to return the object.
Or he has a full-fledged Kinyan, he just has a Kiyuv HaShabbat, which is...
Yeah, but you can't say you have a full-fledged Kinyan and then you have to fork it over to somebody else. I mean, that's a stira Minei Ubeh.
That's Rashash's point from Midas. He has to pay for Midas. So we're just telling you, it's your money, but you have to pay.
Correct.
From this.
Correct. Okay, that's after the Rashash. I'm just saying before. I'm trying to explain why we need the Rashash. Why?
The Rashash itself can say it's a full-fledged Kinyan.
Correct. That would be perfect with Rav. Rav is saying he has a full-fledged Kinyan. Or what? He has a Chiv Hashava. And Rav is going to say that we knock off the Chiv Hashava through what? Through Kim Levi the Rabbi. What do you mean the Chiv Hashava is Mamoni Gabach? And we saw the Chachmei Tzarfatim already established that in Mamoni Gabach there's no din of Kim Levi the Rabbi. You can't acquire ownership over someone else's property based on Kim Levi the Rabbi. But the answer is, says the Rashash, that the Chiv to return the object is a Chiv Tashlumin, and therefore it lends itself to what? To Kim Levi the Rabbi. And that's the way we can explain Rav. So now the next point on our agenda is, so what about Rava? Where is the machlokas between Rav and Rava? Where does Rava part ways from Rav? The simplest way of understanding Rava is to say that he never understood that a chiyuv of Hashavas Hakzela is Tashlumin. He understood that it's a chiyuv of Mamoni Gabach, which means that the Nignav has a right to come by and pick up his vase because it's his vase. Is Mamela what?
We need a wild svara for Rav, so they sense that.
Yeah, that would be the simplest way of saying Rav.
The only way you can make sense of Rav is the way the Rosh does it.
That's what I
Forced into
think.
it. He's forced into it.
So therefore, Rava doesn't have to accept that principle. However, on both sides, I think that we can understand Rava in a different way. Let's go back to the Chiyuv Onsu. We said that a Ganav is Chayiv in Onsu, and Rav understood that a Ganav has a kinyan on the object. Well, guess what? Who says? Maybe Rava rejects that very point. Rava holds that the Chiyuv Onsim is a kind of achrayus. We saw a breakthrough in the case, a precedent in the case of what? Shoel, that a Shoel pays, according to one man the Omar, for Onsim b'Torah's achrayus. So the Torah says to the Ganav, you know what? You are responsible ad infinitum, absolutely responsible, no matter what happens. The lightning strikes, you're going to have to pay for that. Says Rava, that's not Bailim, that's a Chiyuv Achrayus. You have a problem? How can you call it a Chiyuv Achrayus? Because the lightning strike or the animal dropped dead of old age? Therefore, he has Achrayus for that? Well, what about Shoel? In Shoel, he has Achrayus, and yet we said, at least according to one man the Omar, and that Shamil L'Shol means that he doesn't have Bailos. It means the Torah could impose a Chiyuv Achrayus that reaches the highest level and incorporates even what? Even Onsim. And that's the way Rava understood the Chiyuv Onsim of a Ganav. Rava looked at Rav, and he said, Rav is based on the fact that, well, the Ganav has a Chiyuv Onsim, and therefore it's B'Shusei Kaimei. Says Rava, no, it's not B'Shusei Kaimei. The Ganav is doesn't have a kinyan on the object that he stole. It still belongs to the Nignav. You asked me the kasha, but a Ganav is Chiyuv Onsim? Okay, it's Chiyuv Onsim. The Torah imposes a Chiyuv Achrayus on the Ganav ad ein sof, ad infinitum, even to incorporate Onsim, and even in the case of an onus, the Ganav has to.
You say it's a knas that the Torah imposes on the Ganav. It's a knas. It's a punishment for stealing. So you stole, you're responsible ad infinitum.
Ad infinitum. Unlimited achrayus.
It's a punishment.
Unlimited achrayus, even though you're not a violent. But the Torah imposes achrayus. You feel? All of a sudden you're in the back there. You can sit next to me up front, either me or my camera image, whatever you want. We have a seat for you.
Why do you want to say that it's bias and not violent?
Why what?
What are you gaining by saying that it's bias and not violent?
Then in the whole theory, the whole thesis of Rav falls and crumbles in front of your eyes. Do you follow? Rav is predicated on the assumption that a Ganav could own the object. Not well, he doesn't have to return it. And we're saying, why doesn't he have to return it? Well, because it's his. What do you mean it's his? He stole it. So we're going to have to say that there is such a concept called Kinyane Gneva. I don't think, again, I don't want to get off on a tangent, but I don't think in any secular legal system that man ever knew there's such a thing as Kinyane Gneva. Maybe there is such a thing. I don't know. But this is a unique halacha that a Ganav can acquire ownership over things. We're going to have a whole discussion in 5 minutes from now about whether or not the Ganav has to take it into his own rishus to make a kinyan on it, or perhaps he can even take it into rishus of Rabbim. Whatever it is, there's something called Kinyani Gneva. And we have 3 proofs now to Kinyani Gneva. The fact, A, that he's pot for Tashlume Tashmishim. B, the fact that according to one man, the Omar is aim, Shabbat is no Shua, he has to pay for the entire animal. 3, according to Rav, the very fact that he's Chayiv and Achrayus proves that he has Kinyana. Because who could be Chayiv and Achrayus on Onsim? And the answer is only a Bailam could be Chayiv on Onsim.
Maybe even in secular law, I steal a dog, the dog bites someone. So I may be Chayiv, the Ganav may be.
Well, that's a Sugya Narconis, but there you don't have to have Bailus. Why? Because in the Zika there's a separate halacha of Bailam. Like, for example, a Shomer could be Chayiv in Bailam. In the Zik. Why? Because the object is under his supervision. So I don't know if the Zik, all right, anyway, but keep it in mind, Moshe, it's a good point. All right, so now we're saying the following, 2 ways of understanding Rava. One way of understanding Rava is that Rava is of the opinion that a Chiyuv owns him. In the case of a Ganav, it's a Chiyuv Achrayus, it's not violence at all. Or, you know what? Rava might agree that, there is a point in time when a ganav acquires ownership over the object. But here's the question that perhaps lies at the root of the machlokus between Rav and Rav. At what point in time, at what moment in time, does the ganav acquire ownership? Even Rav agrees that the chiyuv onsim, that the ganav has to pay for an onus, is b'toras violent. Rava is on board together with Rav. But Rava says, at what point in time does the ganav become the owner of the object by virtue of the chiyuv onus? When the onus takes place. According to Rav, immediately when he steals the object, he's considered a violent. And therefore, if the onus happens a month, a year later, he has to pay for it. A ganav is chayv owns. Rava says, yeah, a ganav becomes a violent through owns, but only after the onus takes place. Our sugya of Rav, of Baba Machteres, is a case of notlo. What does notlo mean? He's still holding on to what? To the object that he stole. There was no onus. So you're telling me there's a theoretical chiyuv onus if the vase gets hit by lightning. But right now, it hasn't got hit by lightning. If it gets hit by lightning and he's chayv onsim, he pays b'toras bailam, and even Rava can accept that. But Rava attacks Rav because we're talking about a case where the object is still intact. It's be'en, it hasn't been destroyed. The onus didn't take place. And Rava holds that the onus will be makna him, so to speak, the object, but only when the onus takes place. From the moment of onus and on, that's when he became a bailam. But we can't say that he became a bailam mafreya from the time that he stole the object. Rav has no problem. Rav is of the opinion that the moment he stole the object, he takes it out of the reshus of the nignav, and now he acquires ownership. And hence, he'll be chayv ha'onsim. Whether the onus took place or not is irrelevant according to Rav. All I want to do is establish his bailus, and I do that based on the theoretical possibility of onus. So the gnev itself, because it acquires bailus to the ganav, is enough to generate a chiyuv for what? For onsim. We don't have to wait till the onus happens in order for the ganav to actually materialize his kinyan.
You're saying, according to Rav, when the onus happens at that point,
according to who? According to Rav. Okay,
the Torah
got to add that
says,
aleph at the
the
end.
Torah says we're going to put it into your reshus so that you can be chayv.
Right.
We want you to be chayv for this, so we're going to put it into your.
That's Rav. But Rav is saying, Rav is saying, no.
No,
Rav is saying we're going to put it to your reshus from the moment of the onus.
Right, I'm saying, well, I'm trying to understand the logic.
Because again, why should he be chayiv for onsim? There's got to be an element of bailus. The machlokas between Rav and Rava is okay. There's definitely an element of bailus. Even Rav is on bailus. But the question is, when does that bailus emerge?
I understand that. So where do we have a case where all of a sudden you become a bailus? Like all of a sudden you become a bailus?
When the object is gone. If the object is gone, whose object was lost? You understand what I'm saying?
You're saying only in terms of responsibility we're going to put it in.
Rephrase this question. Where's the Masechet?
So it could be,
Retroactive.
it could be that really we have to.
I'm afraid.
It's like board versus rabbit, right? At the moment the animal calls in, at that point he's because
So David asks, where is the king? That's a very profound question. We're building a whole shir on the premise and the principle of a god of being kona. Where's the kinyan? So for this, we have to learn another sugya in Shas. Again, like tonight, we're learning a lot of sugyas in Shas. This is sugya Masechet Ksubis on Daf Lamed Aleph. Do we have? Okay, we don't have Gemara Ksubis, but on Daf Lamed Aleph on the Beis, Tosfos, if you want to make a note of it, you can look it up. Dibra Maskil Bershuso, Tosfos vacillates. Lamed Aleph on the Beis. Tosas Dibra Maskil B'Shuso. I didn't give this to you in the Marmakomos last week because, it's ad infinitum. You're going to see how many different sugyas we're going to have to cover tonight. But in any event, in the Gemara, in Ksubas Daf Lamed Aleph Amid Beis, with regard to the Chiyuv Onsim in Ganov, Tosas has two shitos. So it vacillates back and forth. It's actually Machlokas Rishonim. One shita in the Rishonim says that if the Ganov, Lu Yitzuyur, took out the metaltalin from the Rishus of the Nignav, and he dragged it into Rishus of Rabin. That's the whole sugya there of Kim Leib the Rabin, if you're familiar in Elunaris. So then the Ganav is not Chayfa owns him. When is a Ganav Chayfa owns him? According to this first opinion in Tosfos, only when he drags it into his own Rishus, or into a Simta, or a Bak Makom, Shashayach Lekinyana, whatever it is, all the different permutations. The other by the Yomi in Tosfos says no. Even if he takes the object into Rishus of Rabim, it's enough that he took it out of the Rishus of the Nignav, and he's already Chayv and owns it. And I think that maybe we could take this Machlokas Rishonim and put it back into our issue. The issue that lies between Rava and Rav, namely, why is a Ganav Chayv and owns it? If you're going to tell me that a Ganav is Chayv owns him because he's a Bailim, then we have David's question, namely what? Where's the Kinyan? Eifa Kinyan! And what's the answer to that question, Eifa Kinyan? Those Rishonim who say that a Ganav is only Chayv and owns him when he takes it into his own Rishus. But if he takes it into Rishus of Rabim, he's not Chayv for owns him. But there's another sheet in Tosfos, and Tosfos says that he's Chayv and owns him even if he took it out to Rishus Rabin. Where's the Kinyan here? The answer is there is no Kinyan. And that's exactly what Rava's point is. Rav is saying that a Ganav is Chayav for owns him even without a Kinyan because he's not a Bailim. And if he's not a Bailim, the question according to Rav that faces Rav is, so why is he Chayav and owns him? And what's going to be the answer? The Torah imposed on the Achrayis. Unlimited Achrayis. So again, I just want to summarize the last point. It's really food for thought. What we're saying is that we're vacillating back and forth as to whether the Chiyuv owns him in the case of a Ganav proves that he has a Kinyan. It could be that it's a Chiyuv Achrayus, and maybe the precedent for that would be a Shoel who's Chayav owns him b'Torah Achrayus, at least according to one school of thought. So to a Ganav is Chayav b'Torah Achrayus. And we're saying that this issue of whether or not a Ganav is Chayav midin Bailim on owns him or is Chayav midin Achrayus might be the subject of two opinions in Tosfos Ksubis. Tosfos Ksubis wants to know, did the Ganav make a Kinyan? Meaning, did he take it out of the Rishus of the Nignav and into his own Rishus? Or did he take it onto Rishus of Rabbi? And that's sufficient. If you're operating within Achrayus, the Torah says you're Chayav and Achrayus the moment you took it out of the Rishus of the owner, of the Bailim, of the Nignav. But if you're going to say that the Chiyuv owns him as a result and reflects what? The Kinyan that he has. Just like in owns him in Shoel, he's got to take it into his own Rishus in order to make a Kinyan be Chayav for owns him, according to that man the Omer. So to a Ganav will only be Chayav and owns him if he drags the object out of the Rishus and the Nignav into his own Rishus where he's capable of making a Kinyan.
That won't answer David's question.
What did he say?
That won't answer David's question.
It will answer David's question. Why not? David, you're not happy?
Because the claim that was made was that at the time of the onus, he becomes the violent, which means that whatever opinion he made before was not sufficient. That did not make him the violent. But now the onus is creating violence, and you're still lacking.
1 second. Let me go slowly here. If we're going to assume that the moment of the onus itself is the moment in which the Ganav makes the Kinyan, then we're not operating with the Kinyan of the Knev. In other words, our issue of whether or not the Ganav had to make a Kinyan up front.
Your shtickle right now is going to the other svara. The svara that it's Machlokes Rav and Rav is whether the Chiyuv onus is within Achrayus.
Correct. I was going back to that. And then we have another explanation that it might be, from the time of the Ma'aseh Gneva, it might be for the time of the onus. But again, let's just focus on the first understanding. We saw that Rav says that the reason why the Gan of the Bav Machteres doesn't have to pay, even though he's holding on to what? The Be'en, the Tolo, is because because the Gan of his Chayv and owns him, and we understood Bershusei Kaimet. That's how Rav understood it. Well, guess what? Rav might reject the whole premise. True, Chayv and owns him, but not because the Bershusei Kaimet is a separate Chiyuv owns him. It's independent of violence. And the nafkamina could be the machlokas rishonim as to whether or not the ganav will be chayiv in onsim without a kinyan. In the case where he didn't take it into his own rishus, but rather into where? The rishus of rabbim, that doesn't qualify as a kinyan, then you could only explain the chiyuv onsim in the case of a ganav based on achrayus, based on a separate halach of these chayiv. But if you're going to say, wait a minute, Tosfos says you're not chayiv until you drag it into your own rishus, the ganav would not be chayiv for onsim if he took it into rishus of rabbim, then he's obviously operating with what? With bailus. If he's operating bailus, that reflects the sheet of Rav that a ganav, once he steals the object, he becomes a bailam on the object, and that's why he's chayiv also. But only if he takes it into his own.
None of those opinions on Tosfos spin the Kenyan. It is a Kenyan or not. There is
No, I would say the following: if he takes it into just a rabbin, there's no kinyan, because when you take.
Then there is a Kenyan, even according to Rav, even with the Zionis.
No, what I'm suggesting
You want
is.
Rav and Rav, or there's machlokes?
Yeah, that's what I'm suggesting.
that's-
That the nafkamina between Rav and Rava would also be.
You're not answering
at-
the question of Masechet Kenyan.
Correct,
Right, but
right,
you
right.
would.
The Maisa Kinyan would only be according to that man the Amrit Tosfos, and that would reflect the sheet of Rav that a ganav has a kinyan.
Which means that you wouldn't have to wait for the act of onus.
For sure not.
But that was the claim. The claim was that the bailus happens at the point of onus.
That's what
He's going back to the previous story.
Right.
Which, that's part of
No,
the.
full
that's
question.
part of
My
Okay.
question, but I have another one, according to, if that's how we understand Rav, then, like you said, how is he kona in the machzeres? Mini kim of Rav, the kim of Rav only works when he's in the machzeres, because that's when he's chayiv nisa.
Yeah,
But
and
he's not kona at that point, because he has to bring it to his reshut.
You also others should have Tosfos.
you mean to say
No, but
if
he's saying that Rav, no, but he's saying that Rav holds like that shita, that
Right.
if Rav holds like that shita, you need a kinyan, you bring it to the Yafir.
Right.
But you're not chayiv nisa when,
Yeah.
at the time of the kinyan, when you bring it to the Yafir.
And then you would.
what do you mean you're not chayiv misa? Why isn't he chayiv misa? He's certainly chayiv misa
You only chayiv nisa in the machzeres, right?
in the machter.
When he leaves machzeres, it's not chayiv nisa anymore. So by the time he brings it to his rishus, he's not chayiv nisa anymore, so how does it keep?
Oh, so wait a minute, that's gonna be the next major subject
okay.
that we had, you know? Okay, but before we get to that, I just want to make a summary of what we just said now. I wrote myself a summary. If the chiyuv onsim is din bailim, right? Then we have, so to speak, a kula. What's the kula on the ganav? That he needs mashiach l'shus aganav, correct? According to the just give me 1 second. I just want to get the mathematics here. Again, if the chiyuv onsim is a result and a reflection of bailus, then we would be makil on the ganav and make a stipulation, how should we say, a condition that the ganav is only chayav after what he takes it into his own rishus. Now we go the other direction. According to the Madiyamar, who holds that the ganav is chayav on onsim not midin bailim, but because the Torah imposed a chiyuv achrayus even for onsim on the ganav, as Moshe explained it before, then although that's a gavaldige chumrah, because then we're saying that he is now chayav even without taking it into his rishus because it's a separate chiyuv achrayus, but yet at the same time it's a kula. Where would the kula come about? In the case of shaman. Why? Because if we're saying that he's only chayav midin achrayus, then he only has to pay 4 and not 5. Why is that? Because the whole halacha of ein shaman, where he has to pay for the full 5, is based on bailus, right? So now we're saying that he's only chayav for onsim. See, I'm just trying to point out I wrote this note to myself just for the mathematics, if anyone's interested, that this question as to whether or not a chiyuv of onsim in the case of a ganav is based on bailus or based on achrayus has both a kula and a chumrah. It goes in both directions. It could be a kula in that bailus requires a kinyan, but at the same time it could be a chumrah that ain't shaman l'ganav. You following me at all? Okay. Anyway, that's just okay. Now, Omar Rav.
Could we consider the ganav as at the shas onus as a mazik?
That's what I want to discuss now. Okay, that's going to be the next sugya that we
We
want to
have to
discuss.
discuss this, because like, he keeps on haunting me, the more Pesachim about Acharayas Kabbalas. In other words, Dover Hagoret.
Oh, you're talking about Bal Yorah by Motze,
Yeah.
like
You-
Hilva
you
al
have
Femso and Avlava.
Acharayas, so it's as if you own it. I'm just like,
Correct.
I don't bother you. with
Correct.
it.
So
It's just haunting me.
you're accepting the logic of Rav, which is very exciting because Rava says, "Ooh, I can't even tolerate Rav." Eno, he says, "Velohi." Excuse me. Okay, now Amar Rava. Let's see where we're up to. Oh, this is where we started today, right? So we're on Daf Ayin Beis Amid Aleph. And we're counting down in the lines of the Gemara, starting with the Gemara 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Omar Rav, Mistabra Milsa de Rav Bisheshiber. So what happens? A man burglarizes his friend, Baba Machteres, says Rava, I can understand that the burglar does not have to pay for what? For Nezikin. In the case of Shiber, and that's called Lesnahu, meaning it's not Be'en anymore. And then Rava says, you know what? He's pot. And that I understand. Take a look at Rashi. Mistab, you have it? It's about, 20, 25 lines down from the top of the Yomi. That doesn't help anybody probably. But anyway, you'll find a Rashi, Dibra Maskil Mistab. Yeah?
Beside the Torah or Hashem.
Near the Torah or Sholem. Very good. Okay. Yeah, I'm not used to everybody having the same Gemara in front of them. Very often I have this guy has art school, this guy has Steinsalz, and this guy has this and that, and whatever. Mistabra. Mistabra Milsa de Rav, de Potter B'Sheshiber. Are you ready for this? Okay, hold on to the reins here. Bein Achshav, Bein Liachar Zman. What's Achshav and what's Liachar Zman? Don't answer at once because Trey Koli Lo Mishtamor. Excellent. You hit them off. Achshav means as long as he's in the Machteres. And then he breaks the Kalim and he's potter. Says Rashi, even if he leaves the Machteres and he breaks the object, Rava still embraces Rav and he's potter from Tashlumi Nezik. You'll see in Tosas the same. See Tosas Tirmaska Mistabra on top left. Tosas says, the Torah Maikam Ashmal and Tanina Veshibes Achav is potter. After all, the Mishnah itself says that the Ba Machteres is potter for Shiber. Who can guess Tosas' answer after you've seen Rashi? Exactly. That the Chiddush of Rava here is that not only Lomi Boy is he potter if he breaks the what? If he breaks the vase while he's in the Machteres, but Kamashmal and Rava that even after he leaves the Machteres, if he breaks the Chavis, he's Chayav. Okay, who said why? Eli, was that you? Okay, everybody together in one chorus. Why? So here I would like to see the Ramban. The Ramban in Milchamas Hashem, would you mind, David, reading it? Just that, 1 or 2 lines there. So you want to make a note of this. I think I wrote it up in the Marmakomos, if I'm not mistaken. This is the Milchamos on Daf Yud Zayin. What does it mean, Daf Yud Zayin? Yud Zayin in the Daf Erif. It's a gigantic Ramban. But I have a Masorah for my Rebbe that whenever the Ramban is gigantic, you just have to find that one line in this whole Ramban that's the breakthrough. And that's what we're going to do now. So we're not going to go through the whole Ramban. Everyone's invited to do so on their own free time. Okay. Kevan Shlo Kno, you have it?
Yeah, I'll tell you.
You tell Leola where it is.
It's the first wide line in the Milchamas.
First of the wide lines in the Milchamas Hashem.
Sanhedrin design them out.
Masifta here won't help us. Yeah, Ari?
He says, oh, my ika beinata v'lo shiver, the shiver lachazman. Even shelo kinao misha rishona. We are also sha'a at the pocho.
But what is lo kano mishana rishona? Who misha rishona? Who are we talking about now? Rava. We're not talking about Rav. Rav holds that he was kona misha rishona. But now Rav is saying, I disagree with you. I don't hold that he was Kona Misha Rishona. And Afal Pichen, I hold that he's potter for breaking the Kli. So therefore, Says the Ramban, Val osa shah potro. What does he mean, al osa shah?
That's the only moment you have Kimmel judgment.
What is that moment? Just spell it out for us. Make believe we're fourth graders. At the moment that he's in the Machteres, right? At that point, we're going to say he doesn't have to pay Nezikin because at that point he's Chayav Misa. But in Shiber, go ahead, read on.
Shiva the Akrazman, am I put?
Am I pote after Lachazman? He's a mazik. Ribbon Shalom, he's a mazik. He's doing a Maisa Hezek. And the Maisa Hezek should generate a Chiv what? A Chiv Tashlum Nezikin. What are you saying? You're pote. If you hold like Rav, that he was Kona Mishah Rishona, fine. But if you're holding like Rava, he wasn't Kona Mishah Rishona. So you could say that he's potter for breaking the Kli while he's in the Machteres, because at that point he's Mischayev B'nafsho, he can't. But now, when did he break the Kli? He broke the Kli after he left the Machteres. He's a mazik. Why should he pay Tashlum Nezikin? Harei al Shvira Zu Atamachayvo. And now the Ramban invokes a sugya in two, which appears in two places in Shas, but we'll suffice with one, and that's Bava Kama Daf Samachet. Okay, so we'll talk about the sugya on in Bava Kama Daf Samachet. Man, the Gazal Chavita de Cham. Okay, so what does the Gemara say over here? I have the Gemara here. Gemara says. Some have the Girsa Rabbah, but anyway, Hi man the Gazal Chavita de Chamer Michav. Right, he stole a barrel of wine. Meikara, what does Meikara mean? At the time he stole it, Shav Yezuzah. It's worth a zuz. Oh, we'll see the Ram jacks it up to 2 zuz. I don't know why, but anyway. So it was worth 2 zuz. Libasov. Now it's worth what? There's a mad rush to buy wine in the right. So there's a what should I say? A dearth of wine. Right, the law of what's called supply and demand. Yeah. When I learned in Yavna, so I was coming back in the middle of my second year, and David Willig, I asked him to register for me in college, for that semester, even though I was coming back after Purim. So he registered me in Queens College for economics. So I ended up taking 4 courses in economics. Oh boy, that wasn't for me. Not a good way of breaking into college. Anyway, so Meikara, it was worth what? A zuz. How much is it worth now? Right, there's a low supply and a great demand on wine, and now it's worth Shavya Dalit Zuzi. Okay. Says Rava or Rabba, Tavra, if he breaks the barrel, Oshasya, or he drinks the wine, Mishalim Dalit. He pays 4 zuzim. Can anybody explain that to me?
He's mazik or stealing now.
What do you mean stealing now? He's a mazik.
Well, he drinks it. Oh.
If he's okay, I'm giving you the ktsos. Okay, and we'll see the Nasiba says
At
different
least he
approach.
doesn't come.
But the ktsos is saying that he's chayav as a mazik. And right now, when he was mazik, it's worth how much? 4. So he pays 4. Itbar memela, it breaks, and therefore he's not chayav as a mazik. So what could it be chayav for?
For stealing this.
Only as a ganav. If he's chayav as a ganav, mishalem suza kishasak zelo. Says the Ramban. Let's go back to the Ramban in Milchamos. He says, "Can I read on demand the gazal chavita the chamer b'mesechta b'avakama b'mesechta b'avaktzia?" That when he breaks the chavis, he's chayav as a mazik, and since he's chayav as a mazik, and now it's worth how much? 4. He'll pay 4. Hachinami here too. When he was baba machteres, he was chayav misa where? Rabosai in the machteres. Now he left the machteres, niftar mimisa. Okay, so what did he do now? He broke the object. If he broke the vase, he's a mazik. So forget about the original Gneva. Who cares about the original Gneva? Achshav hu shover kelov shel chaveiro amai potur. And the Ramban is so compelling. It's like Onus Rachmana Patri. He's like tying us with this. How do we understand Rashi and Tosfos here? And the Ramban here is attacking the Baal HaMor. Okay, so he's attacking the Baal HaMor, but forget about the Baal HaMor. We have Rashi and Tosfos. And Rashi and Tosfos hold that he's potter for for destroying the object even after he left the Machteres. So here at this point, Rabbosai, we want to learn Reb Chaim Brisker. But first, we have to introduce the Ketzos and the Nesivos. It's all in Siman Lamed Daled in Choshen Mishpat. The Ketzos says that Tafri V'Shasya, he's Chayav B'Tor Masechet. And therefore he pays for Zuzim the value of the object and the time that he destroys the object. Simple, no? Says the Nesivos, no. The Nesivos says he's Chayav as a Ganav. And at that moment when he destroys the object, David, I think you were hinting at this before, maybe. No? Anyway, if you were Chayav to the Nesivos. Right?
No, I was saying that if he drinks it, that should be Geneva, not Mazikin.
Good. That's interesting. But you can destroy someone's object by drinking it as well. That's another way of consuming it. But the Nesivos says that he's Chayav as a Masechet. I'm sorry. The Nesivos says, start again, he's Chayav as a. So Reb Chaim says that he believes that he found a Rambam that supports the Nesivos. Okay? So we're going to try to learn this Rambam. It's the Rambam in the first parak of Hilchas Kineva, Halacha Yudalid. And let's listen carefully to the language of the Rambam. And we'll see that Reb Chaim has a kash on the Rambam, a logical question on the Rambam. And the answer could only be predicated on the Nesivos against the Ketzos. Ganav behema okli v'chayotzu behen ubeshas hagneva hayeshava arba. Okay. Just 1 second. Maybe that part is. Oh, okay. I'm going to skip the ratio because that's a more complicated case where it went down in value. Okay, we're not talking about that. Okay, in the Al Gemara it says 1 zuz. All right, the Rambam has the right to change it a little bit. It was worth 2. Ubeshas hamada b'din arba. Okay, at the time of hamada b'din, it's worth 4. I mean, can you already sense where the difficulty lies in this Rambam? I mean, the Reb Chaim is going to point this out. Im shachad o machar o shibres hakli o ibdo. So if he got rid of the object by either shechting the animal or selling it on the market, and by the way, if he shechts it or he sells it, how much does he have to pay this guy? He's got to pay daled vehei. Oh shavar hakli. So again, there's no daled vehei, but he has to pay kefel, correct? Oh ibdo, he destroyed it, pays kefel. Mishalem tashlume kefel o arba v'chamisha kishas hamoda b'din. Rector Reb Chaim. Anybody want to just ask the question that Reb Chaim is going to ask? Do you like to do that, or just... Yaakov, help me out of it. What's Reb Chaim going to ask here? Originally, it was worth 2. He destroyed it when it was worth 4. Correct? Was that the case? Well, we don't know how much it's worth it, then he would destroy it. In any event, let me give you the following scenario. It was worth 4 b'shas shvira, when he broke the kli, when he sold it, when he shechted the animal, blah, blah, blah. It was worth 4. Now, until we get to Hamada B'din, right, it takes a while until we can sue the Gana for damages, make him pay, and so forth and so on. Let's say it went up to 5. According to the Rambam, how much does the Gana pay? He pays 5. Is that true? It's not true. I fooled you. Deliberately. Got to put me in chayr for that. What the Rambam is saying is the following. Yeah, David, you know?
He says Kishas Hamada B'din.
Yeah, but what does he mean by Kishas Hamada B'din? I'll tell you what he means. He means that the Keren, he will pay Kishas Shvira o Mesa, meaning he'll pay 4. I think we said it was 4. However, With regard to the kefel, he's going to pay kishas hamona b'din. Why? Because when does kefel emerge?
No.
Kefel or dalvin? Only after hamona b'din. Beis Din has to establish the knas. Until you establish the knas, there's no chiyuv ma, meaning chiyuv knas. If you want to be more meticulous about it.
Which one is it? What do you call it? That's the nine.
So the Rambam is saying that there are two dinim over here. The Rambam is telling me that as far as the Karen is concerned, he's chayav b'shas destruction, when he destroys it. But as far as other chiyuv are concerned, for example, kefil adal v'hei, that depends on Hamona b'din. So Reb Chaim asks the following question. Reb Chaim says that if you're operating with Hamona b'din, the shas Hamona b'din, then I don't understand. Where's the Gneva? When did the Gneva take place? How much was it worth at the time of the Gneva? It was worth 2. So let him pay 2 times 2. Why are you saying that he pays 2 times 5? Why is it Hamona b'din? You understand the Reb Chaim's cash over here? The Rambam makes no sense. I don't know how the Rambam got away with this for 8 centuries until Reb Chaim came along. It's an obvious question. You can't tell me that because of Hamona b'din, he's going to pay kishas Hamona b'din. There was no Gneva at the time of Hamona b'din. So you want to be Mechayev him Kefel, I would say Kefel times 2, meaning at the time of the Gneva. What's Mechayev Kefel? The Maisa Gneva. Later on, he was Mazik. Okay, he was Mazik. So then he'll pay Kishas Hezek. Or alternatively, says the Rambam, as far as Kefil Adal V'hei, he's going to pay Kishas Hamona b'din. Why is that so? Says Reb Chaim, it only makes sense if you accept the Nesivos. Because what's the yesod of the Nesivos? The Nesivos holds that the Chiyuv Gneva continues. It's not that the Chiyuv Gneva is established at the time of the Maisa Gneva. Haraya says the Nesivos that if it was worth 1 and now it's worth 4, again in the case of the Gemara, he's going to pay 4. But why does he pay 4, says the Nesivos? Because he's a Ganav. What do you mean he's a Ganav? He destroys the object. Is that called Gneva? Says the Nesivos, he's chayav as a Ganav. Why? Because he stole the object, and that Gneva continues until what point? Until Hamona b'din. Ooh, if that be the case, Rabbosai, let's go back to our sugya. This might explain Rashi and Tosfos against the Ramban. What was the Ramban's argument? The Ramban's argument was, how can you tell me that when he left the Machteres, he's going to pay what? He's going to be potter from Nezikin. How can he be potter from Nezikin? He's a Mazik. The answer is, why is he chayav when he destroys the object? What's the Nesivos going to say? He's chayav as a Ganav. Well, if he's chayav as a Ganav, when did he steal it? When he was in the Machteres. And at that point, he was mischayav b'nafsho. So that the chiyuv Gneva here, when he destroys the object, depends upon the moment that he stole the object. He became a Ganav. Well, guess what? At that moment, he was mischayav b'nafsho. So it means that the ultimate hezek, ultimate meaning the later hezek, takes me back, according to the Nesivos, to the original Gneva, and is considered a hemshech of the original Gneva. Then maybe we can make some sense out of Rashi and Tosfos and the Balamor. There, yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
If the handshake continues, then how does Kimley keep following it?
Because it's like A plus B. I forget your first name. I'm sorry. Tzvi. It's like A plus B equals C. What do I mean? You start with a Maisa Gneva, that's A. Then you go to a Maisa Hezek, that's B. And C means that the Maisa Hezek becomes a hemshech of the original Gneva. So that the Machayev is not the Maisa Hezek per se, that's the Ksos, but rather the Machayev is the Maisa Gneva. Why? Because the Nesivos is right in this context, and we have a raya to Nesivos from the Rambam, namely that you're Chayev b'Torah Ganav. So it's not a din of Mazik. If it was a din of Mazik, the Ramban is 1,000% correct. Let him pay because there's no Kimle with the Rambam. He's outside of what? Of the Machteres. But if on the other hand, I see a tziruf here, I can link, I have a linkage between what? Between the Maisa Hezek And the original Gneva, if the Maisa Nezek takes me back to the original Gneva, well, at the time of the Gneva, he was Potter. Why was he Potter? Because it came later around and he was in the Machteres.
It's still a jump from the Nesivos to Rashi Tosfos.
What do you say?
It's still a bit of a jump from the Nesivos to Rashi Tosfos.
I don't know. I like to jump a little bit. You know? I'm just saying. No, the Pella here is, Rabos, I just want to end with this. The Pella is, the Ramban is so, how should I say, compelling. How do you make sense? All the Rishonim are against the Ramban. The Ramban Zakhteb is Pashid. We saw in the Sugi of in Bava Metzia, and it's also Bava Kama, that he pays Kishas Shvira. Why does he pay Kishas Shvira? The answer is because the new Machayev. What's the new Machayev? Says the Ksos, Mazik. No, in this case, there's a new Machayev of Mazik because he destroys it. He's not in the Machteres. So how are you gonna convince me that this Kim Leib the Ramine? But if you introduce the Nesivos, that Tavrei Shasya is a hemshek of what? Of the original Maisa Gneva, and he pays for the Tavrei Shasya B'Torah Ganav. Well, guess what? You want to draw me back to the original Maisa Gneva. Well, the Maisa Gneva was in the Machteres at the time that he was what? He was part of Midin Kim Leib.
How does the Ramban then explain Rava's statement?
Why is that a question? I don't understand the question. I mean, Rava.
Well, why did Rav have to tell me that? It's already in the Mishnah. Why does Rav have to say that?
Oh, that's in the Ramban. I don't remember. Take a look. The Ramban goes through that. You know, I didn't. I just wanted to get to the punchline.
You sign him off Sanhedrin.
I'll never forget. We once learned the Ramban in Milchamus, and when the Rav got to the punchline, he says, "If I cover the Ramban, I would think it's Rav Chaim who's talking." You understand? The greatness of the Ramban is because he reminds the Rav about Rav Chaim. I mean, I would have said it the other way around, if you know what I mean. We were learning Psachim once. The Ramban Milchamus in Psachim, defending the Rif against the onslaught of the Balamar, says, Hama'ar hazeh hichshich es ha'olam. He says, the Rishonim were very sharp. Okay, Rabbosai, I want to end the shir with an invitation. I don't know if you saw it, that my wife and I would like to host a barbecue / kuzes with ruach and music in honor of Hilula Darashbi, which is next Monday night. Did I get that right? Monday night. So, gentlemen, if you'll come with your wives and each one with his own wife, right? And you'll join us for the Lag BaOmer celebration. We'll be happy and we'll get to see each other in a slightly different. We'll start at 8:30 because in Dagan, where we're located, there are a lot of young people who have children, and the parents have to, oversee the bonfires and all supervise. So therefore, we start officially at 8:30. If you'd like, we could probably organize Ma'ariv there, but all I need to know is how many people are coming. I mean, that's my wife's tonight booked up because she has to know, what to buy and what to do. All right, then.
Do we have an address?
Yeah, Hadagan Shmon.
It's written.
In other words, Dagan is the name of the neighborhood, and we live on a street that's called Hadagan. So if you just remember 8,
Okay.
you'll find it. Okay, then?
Street in Dagan.
It's Monday night, right?
Okay, we don't have that much time to Myra, but at least we'll get there on time.
It's interesting that Ramban has to bring
Yeah.
that Gemara in Bava Kama.